Hello, I'm Matt Elliott, and if you're watching this, you're probably a fan of Rallyman like I am. Now, I first came on board with Rallyman GT, taking us on circuit races all around the world. But you might have found out about it with the recent Rallyman Dirt Kickstarter. And are more interested in going off-road. These games really are toolboxes to allow us to create anything we want. We can mix and match the components for a spot of rallycross, for example. All depends on what you're in the mood for. What am I in the mood for today? I want to go to the moon. This is Rallymoon, and it combines my passion for Rallyman with my interest in space. There are multiple ways you can play Rallymoon, and all you'll need is a copy of the rules, available to download from Board Game Geek, and the base game of Rallyman Dirt. These little lunar rovers are completely optional, but I got giddy when I saw them on Shapeways and knew I had to have a couple. They're 3D printed, some assembly and superglue is required, and that was quite tricky, but I got them to a state that I was happy with eventually, and then broke an antenna off right before filming. I've had to reattach them so many times, and they're so phenomenally fiddly that it's easier to leave them off. I wish I was joking, but right after filming that, I dropped my phone and broke the second antenna. That's not getting fixed. Right, we need somewhere to race these guys. Rallymoon comes with 26 stage maps for you to race on, based on the actual traversal routes for Apollos 15, 16 and 17. For a more authentic feel, they're presented in a manner similar to the checklists that were worn on the astronauts' wrists, which happens to be this print-friendly black and white version, but track editor files are available for you to print them out however you see fit. Each stage has a basic name along with a list of tiles needed to create it, and they will always include a start line next to an arrow and a finish line, and if this is all you want to use Rallymoon for, you can. Each stage also has a sidebar which will tell you which Apollo mission and EVA it comes from, allowing you to string together multiple stages into one EVA or multiple EVAs into one mission. And again, if this is all you want to use Rallymoon for, take it away. But if you're like me, the kind of person who dives into the archives to find out what the lunar rover vehicle was capable of, and then buys and builds and paints a scale model just to play on a board game, then you'll be wondering what all this lunar surface procedure stuff is. For that, you'll have to check out the full rules to Rallymoon, which allow you to race across the surface of the moon as though you're driving the LRV itself, along with all its quirks and capabilities, as well as rules for stopping off at geological stations to gather some scientific data, in a small mini-game that will allow you to compare your results against those of the Apollo crews themselves. In this video, I'm going to show you the first EVA for Apollo 15, the very first time that man drove on the surface of the moon. I'm going to show you the rules to Rallymoon as and when they come up. I'm also going to give you some insight as to what Commander David Scott and Lunar Module pilot Jim Irwin got up to on their actual EVA. But before we do, let's just find out how this lunar roving vehicle came to be. The history of space exploration is fascinating. For our purposes, it begins in 1952. Collier's magazine is aiming to inspire its readers about the future of space travel with a series of articles written by the top scientists and astronomers of the day, notably rocket scientist Dr. Wernher von Braun. Reading these articles, it's clear that he is optimistic. On this particular example voyage, 3 ships assembled in orbit around the Earth will blast their way towards the moon, packed with enough supplies and equipment for 50 scientists to have a 6-week stay on the lunar surface. One of these ships is on a one-way trip and will be broken down and transformed into the living quarters and laboratories for the duration of the mission. To haul everything across the lunar surface, 3 tank-like cars are fitted out with cranes and wagons to lift and tow everything and everyone wherever it needed to be. 7 men can sit inside the pressurized cabin up front, and the rest will have to admire the view from the wagons in the back. As a result of Soviet advances into space, what was predicted to happen in the late 1970s is urged to happen before the end of the 60s.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
There are, broadly speaking, 2 ways to get to the moon. Collier's articles explain the elaborate method. The alternative?
You build an enormous rocket, put a capsule on top, boom, you go straight to the moon.
But just going to the moon comes with a giant caveat. You have to travel light, really light. To get a 3-man crew, along with their command module, service module and lunar module to the moon and back, required this much rocket underneath them. If you make any of those things heavier, or add more of them, you need all of this to be a lot bigger. To just go to the moon would mean everything that wasn't essential to the goal of getting to the moon had to go.
Do we need them? Yeah, Tom. I think the astronauts might want to see where they're going. Do they need windows this big? No. Of course they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to see from their seats.
What if they don't need seats?
Yet the scientific potential that could be unlocked by allowing a crew to land in the middle of multiple areas of interest, rather than right on top of just one, meant that the vehicle was quickly becoming more of a necessity. But how do you get a vehicle to the moon on the same flight as the crew, without making your rocket any bigger? Enter the LRV, the Lunar Roving Vehicle, a lightweight electric vehicle that folds up to fit inside an awkwardly shaped box on the side of the lunar lander. It's a design marvel. 4 electric motors power its mesh wheels across the lunar surface. Central controls allow you to drive it while wearing bulky spacesuit gloves. It was engineered to such a degree and for so specific a purpose that the mechanism for unfolding it from the lunar lander doesn't even work under the full force of Earth's gravity. So if we want to see what it's really capable of, we're going to have to get it to the moon.
Dynamics reports go for staging. Please stage. Roger. Okay, Houston, looks like you've got a good limb in there. And you're on your own. Okay, good clean step.
4-2. 4-3. 300 feet.
Falcon, Houston, you go for landing.
Roger, go for landing. 8 feet, -1. Contact. Man. Okay, Houston, the Falcon is on the plane at Hadley.
Outstanding.
Yeah, let me get around here. Okay, we're coming up here, 45. Up to about, easy, Jim, easy. Looks like she's coming down okay. Hey, can you pull it out a little bit, Jim? Up, up. That looks good. Easy does it. It's coming okay. Hey. Come on over and we'll, stay here. Man, this thing's nice and light.
It's 1971 and Commander David Scott and lunar module pilot Jim Irwin have landed in the Hadley Apennine region, about 600 metres north and 175 metres west of where they intended, but thanks to the LRV this won't be an issue. They've studied the maps and the photographs taken on previous Apollo missions and know what tasks they need to perform and where they need to perform them, and so should we.
You know what I bet you did last night, Joe? You let some of those Marshall guys come up here and fix it, didn't you?
They've been working, that's for sure.
It works, Dave? Yes, sir. It's working, my friend. Beautiful.
Now, the main aim of Rallymoon is to perform science on the surface of the moon. It is to visit some geological stations to gather some samples in as efficient a time as we can. And that basically means you need to score as many points as you can in as quick a time as you can. Let's look at our stage maps in a little bit more detail. I've put some crater names and a compass rose on these maps to give you an idea of where on the lunar surface you are. They are accurate up to a point. You won't be able to navigate the actual lunar surface with them, but it's nice to get your bearings as to how each stage fits together. In which case, over there is north and we're heading southwest. The Lunar Surface Procedures section of the stage maps tell us which tiles are geological stations as well as which tiles are test drive tiles. And that's to remind you of the 2 different steering modes of the lunar roving vehicle.
But I don't have any front steering, Joe. Like just rear steering, Dave. Yeah.
What Commander Scott has just learned is that he doesn't have any front steering. The LRV was designed with 2 steering modes, a traditional Ackerman setup where one set of the wheels turns, your choice of front or rear, or a double Ackerman setup where both sets of wheels turn, allowing for a tighter turning radius and more manoeuvrability. The two steering modes can be thought of as one where you go fast and one where you don't crash. And as this is a relatively straightforward stage ahead of us, I'm hoping to make use of the one where we go fast for the bulk of the stage. But because of this test drive tile, it says that we must change our steering modes on that tile, or the ability to switch between our steering modes is lost for the duration of the EVA. So we have our dashboard set to the double Ackerman steering mode. And we're going to start this stage with a flying start die in gear 2. Now, the variant rules to Rallyman can be used in Rallymoon if you like to make use of them. And knowing that we have to stop somewhere on the test drive tile, I think a flying start, even though it's a little bit riskier, will allow us to get further through that tile and set us up for a good turn on turn 2. And then I'm going to coast into the hairpin in gear 1, and then coast into middle of the tile at the end of our turn. Now I'm choosing to use the leader dice for this stage, and it was a thought that I had off camera, and that is to simulate the astronauts getting used to their LRV, in that perhaps your first EVA of the mission should be done on leader dice until the crew is ready to understand and adapt to how the LRV actually drives on the surface of the moon. You can, of course, use normal coast dice, especially if you're playing solo and you don't really want to crash every 5 minutes. It is completely up to you, but have a think about that for thematic reasons if you like. So I'm going to go flat out on these 4 dice. The double Ackerman steering mode allows us up to 4 hazards before we lose control. We have 4 absolutely flawless dice. That will earn us 4 focus points or seconds. I'm probably going to switch between focus and seconds. I come from Rallyman GT, so I know them as focus. Just know that they are exactly the same thing. We can use these to pay for dice if we don't want to roll them, or they will reduce our time at the end of the stage. We have put ourselves right here, and we are going to end our turn. Now, we end our turn in gear 1, so we take a gear 1 time card as normal. But because we want to switch our steering modes, we're going to turn that over to gear 0, and then we're going to change our dashboard over to the Ackerman steering setup. So we are in gear 0. I'm going to start in gear 1 on the hairpin. I'm then going to move to gear 2 and gear 3 here. It's about time I should introduce you to the diagonal movement rule for the Ackerman dashboard. And that is to say that if we were to make a diagonal move from our dice, for example, if I were to put the gear 3 die here, we would take a hazard symbol there and then for the turn. And that is to simulate that on the surface of the moon, rocks and craters often came up so quick that you didn't have time to adapt your steering to avoid them. If you imagine a grey landscape with a bunch of grey rocks and craters that you can't see from your seating position as you are bouncing around on the lunar roving vehicle, it's best to go slowly or at least straight as you can. And so making a diagonal movement does come with a bit of a hazard. However, if you are to find yourself in a position where you've got a double wide space, you can make smart use of that space and effectively switch lanes like that, in order to get around that restriction on your Ackerman dashboard. So I'm going to go up to gear 6 here, and I think that is going to be our turn. So we're going to roll these one by one. I don't feel confident. The 1 is good, the 2 is good, the 3 is a hazard, the 4 is our second hazard. Now we can pay for these dice using our focus tokens just like normal. But if we were to end our turn in gear 5 or 6 in Ackerman steering, then we will have to roll an extra leader dice for that turn. Now, we might get some extra distance from that dice, but we also run the risk of rolling an extra hazard symbol and crashing. And this is to simulate the perhaps disturbing feature of the LRV, which is to say that unless you actively pulled back on the control stick to slow down, it would happily keep on driving at whatever speed you are currently in. I am going, therefore, to show you what would happen if I were to pay for these dice. That would cost 1 for the first dice and 2 more for the second dice. And then hope to roll nice and clean on this leader die. That would put us in 6 in this water hazard. It is clean, so we do end up in gear 6 in the water hazard. The water hazards are exactly the same in Rallymoon, just pretend that they are craters. So we take a gear 6 time card for our turn, and that is turn 2 of Rallymoon complete. We are in gear 6 and we've got a couple of jumps coming up ahead of us. Jumps are as risky on the surface of the moon as they are on any other surface in Rallyman, so we're going to have to think about this carefully. First of all, we definitely have to drop down to gear 4. We could take our jump in a higher gear, but obviously taking it in gear 6 will immediately end our run for being too high a gear, so we'll try not to do that. So if we put it down here, that will effectively end us in that space. We can then coast in our second space. We could go up to 5, which would skip 2 spaces to put us here. Now, we have a shortcut coming up. I don't know if you can see it on that camera. We have a shortcut coming up, which is gear 5. Now, if we ended our turn like this, we can make use of that special rule for the Ackerman steering to get an extra space of movement through that shortcut. And that'll probably be the best we can do on our turn. So that's going to be my plan. Again, I'm going to roll these one by one. I've only got one focus token left. There is a hazard on the 4, but it is fine. There is a hazard on our coast die. So that is a risk. Do I want to take that risk? I am not entirely certain I do. So I'm going to stop there and we're going to take a gear 4 time card for the turn. We don't get to roll that extra leader die to take an extra bit of space. We're not going fast enough. And we are going to end our turn right here. So I'm going to try and do much the same as the previous turn. I need to sort of get myself onto this tile and end there and then. So I'm going to start in gear 4. I'm going to use that jump to take me there. I'm then going to go up to gear 5. I'm then going to coast into the shortcut, and then if all goes well, I will have the leader die coast in this space over here. I'm feeling particularly lucky. I'm going to go flat out on these. That is fine. That takes us over the jump, and then our 2 extra dice take us into the shortcut. Now, we do have to take a shortcut token to see how our LRV is holding up. Shortcuts are still risky. We are okay for this shortcut. And because we've ended our turn in gear 5, we're going to roll that extra leader die to hopefully get us an extra bit of space. That puts us in this space in gear 5. We're going to take a gear 5 time card, and that is our turn complete. Now we're in gear 5. I do want to go through that shortcut in gear 4, but it will take us a hazard for moving diagonally to get there. At least that's the most efficient way I can think of right now. So if we drop to 3 and then go through the shortcut in 4, come out in 5, up to 6, and we can coast in 6, and we will see what happens. I don't know if we'll get that far, but we will plan that move out ahead regardless. So for even rolling these 2 dice, we are going to take 1 hazard symbol for moving diagonally. So we only have 2 left. The 3 showed a hazard. 1 focus point to not roll the 4. That puts us into the shortcut in gear 4. We're going to take a token from the damage bag to see if our shortcut was good. Our shortcut was good. I am lucky on the shortcuts, not on the dice today. I have 2 hazards for the turn. I don't want to risk going into gear 5 and spinning out, especially because it is a red danger level corner. So I don't want to pull an awful lot of damage on this first stage. So I'm going to end my turn there. We are in gear 4. Take a gear 4 time card, and that is our turn complete. Okay, we have a gear 5 jump coming up and a gear 3 jump beyond that. Now I want to go for distance on this, I think. So I'm going to break down to 2 and then come up through the gears into 3, into 4, into 5, which takes us on a jump there, a coast die in that last space. And we will see what happens. Again, going one by one, I don't think a flat out would be wise right now. The 2 and the brake are both hazards. That is why a flat out isn't wise. However, I don't want to end my turn in gear 2. I want to see how far I can get. Gear 3, come on, gear 3 is a hazard. We are going to spin out after just 2 spaces. So we are going to trundle our way along. That shortcut, maybe it was deeper than we thought. We're going to take a gear 3 time card, turn it over, see how much damage we pull. We are in a yellow zone, so that is no damage. Brilliant. Not the best of turns, definitely not the worst. We will try to improve in future. We are in gear 0. We're going to go up to gear 1 in this space, gear 2 over the jump, can't make use of it, gear 3, and then up to gear 4, and then I'm going to coast. And then, because I'm feeling luckier this time, I'm going to roll all of them flat out. See if we can generate some focus. That is good. 5 clean dice. We generate 5 focus points and we propel ourselves towards the end of the stage. I'm going to take a gear 4 time card and that is our turn. Now, up ahead of us, as well as being a gear 3 jump, is our first geological station of the stage. So it's about time that we ask ourselves where on the moon we actually are, and there's no better tool for that than going into Google Moon. Needless to say, I've been looking at this stuff for a long time now, but Apollo 15 is one of the easiest landing sites to find, and it's thanks to these dark regions known as seas. Now, up here is the Sea of Serenity, and where it meets the Sea of Showers on the left is a mountain range known as the Apennines. If we zoom into this band of high-resolution imagery, we'll see that on the left of the Apennines is a rill. Now, this is Rima Hadley, and this is like a deep, empty river. We need to follow it to its eastern point here, at Mons Hadley Delta, a mountain at the bottom. This is St. George's Crater on the mountainside, and on the valley below, this little blob here is Elbow Crater. We can check that we're in the right place if we turn on the annotations, where we'll find that the landing site of Apollo 15 and its 3 EVAs are all marked up for us. And it also comes with a bunch of links to some photos and some videos. And I'm going to show you this one here. When the crew confirmed that they were staying on the surface of the moon, Commander Scott was allowed to poke his head out the top hatch of the lander and take this panorama photo. And it allowed him to sort of identify where he was and explain to the geologists back on Earth what he was seeing. It also allowed him to see where he was going on the first EVA, which is towards St. George's Crater on Mons Hadley Delta. So if we just zoom out here and adjust our view a little bit, we can follow the route of the first EVA. What they basically did was drive in one direction until they found Rima Hadley, which you absolutely can't miss. And then they had to drive south towards St. George until they found Elbow Crater. It's almost like finding waypoints in the Dakar Rally Raid. Like the Dakar, the scale of this place is remarkable. This footage is from Gran Turismo 6, which included some Apollo 15 themed missions for players to get a taste of what it's like to drive on the moon in a somewhat accurate manner. Rocks do jump out in front of you when you least expect them to, and you can drive for minutes on end and still St. George seems to get no closer. It's quite dramatic. Just as dramatic is this photo from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter taken in the early 2010s. Hopefully you can recognise Rima Hadley and St. George by now, and if we zoom into the corner you'll identify Elbow, and the eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted the arrow, and that points to what's left of the lunar lander, its descent stage, all 4 pixels of it. I could spend hours looking at this sort of thing, but you're here for Rallymoon and we're approaching our first geological station. You did bring all your equipment, didn't you? Now, the first thing we need to think about when visiting a geological station is how to stop on that tile so that we can actually get off our rover and perform all of the scientific data gathering that we need to do. When your geological station is also the finish line to a stage, you are allowed to finish the stage and then get off your car to perform your scientific tasks, as long as you stop, of course, in the spaces after the finish line. So if at all possible, we want to do that to try and be efficient, but it is not required of us if that situation comes up. So I am going to drop down to gear 3 in order to put us over into this space, and then going to drop down to gear 2 drop down to gear 1 and then coast over the finish line. I'm going to roll these flat out. I'm feeling lucky. We have one hazard on the 3, so we are able to cross the finish line without crashing. That has generated us 4 points of focus as well. And we are going to take a gear 1 time card to end our turn. We're going to turn it over, however, into gear 0 because we are stopping for our lunar surface procedures. Now, your lunar surface procedures on your stage map will tell you how many gears that you need to roll and how many minutes it will take for your station tasks at this station. Each station has a checklist of tasks that the astronauts would like to have performed at that station within that time limit. So obviously there was a priority task, and then there was some secondary tasks and anything else that could be done to fill the time. Now, we roll these one by one so that we have the opportunity to pay focus tokens to not roll them, just as in the regular game. But we can't go flat out on these dice because we're trying to do some accurate science. So the gear 1 die is a good. The gear 2 die, if this were to roll a hazard, would interrupt our sequence of numbers. So we could pay for it. It would cost 1 focus, but I'm feeling hopeful with this roll. It is good. We have a sequence of 1 and 2. Hopefully we can get a 3 as well. Again, we could pay for it to guarantee that point, but I'm just going to hope for the best. The 3 is good as well. We have a run of 1, 2, 3. We have scored 3 points for that geological station, and it has taken us 15 minutes to do that. Our final act of the geological station is to decide whether we want to change our steering modes or not. And looking at the next stage coming up, I think I am going to take this opportunity to switch back into double Ackerman steering. All that is left for me to do is to see how long it has taken me to navigate this stage, and while that is happening, I will leave you with some footage from Apollo 15 to see what they got up to at their own Elbow Crater station.
High gauge pointed, and we've got a fair amount of dust on the rover, very light, thin. Okay, I see the camera coming up. And we got that Velcro on the Noman bag fixed. Hey, read me, Jim. Loud and clear, Dave. Are you reading Houston? No. Okay, I'm taking a pan. Okay. Looks like a breccia, all right. Quite friable, but I see a lot of sparklies in there. No glass, subangular, with lots of dust on it.
This is Houston with the comm check.
Yeah, that's a lot better, Joe. I thought we lost you there for a minute.
We're hearing every word, loud and clear.
Take this one right here, Jimmy. Got it? Yeah, I got the downside. Okay, the location shot here. Okay, Joe, these are buried about an inch or so. The one I have is subangular. It's covered with dust, but beneath the dust, by golly, I see olivine. Look at this, Jim. I'm not sure that the ones out here aren't thrown up from nearby. Yeah, I don't know that this is representative too much of elbow. I don't think so either. But let's pick up one more anyway since we're out here. I see a little one. Hope I don't lose these tongs. On the underneath side of this frag, Joe, I can see some soil that is caked on the bottom, about 1 millimeter thick. And maybe down in the place from which I got it, we could sample. Why don't we get I'll take a picture and you can scoop that.
Okay, Dave, we copy. Good description. We'd like a bag number from that and like for you to move out at your next opportunity, please.
Okay, we're on the way. I wish we could just sit down and play with the rocks for a while. Look at these things. They're shiny, sparkly. Come on, Dave, there'll be a lot of them. Let's get back. Can't resist it. Go find something neat at St. George.
Recording this in a voiceover because I missed a couple of focus tokens during that stage. We finished in 4 minutes and 25 seconds. We ended up with 12 focus tokens. That will reduce our time a little bit. Our station tasks took us 15 minutes and they scored us 3 points. That was the maximum amount. So we finished EVA-IA in 19 minutes and 13 seconds. We have no damage and we still have our spare tyre. So while I get ready for stage 2, I am going to leave you with some footage of what the crew thought of their rover.
Feels like we need the seatbelts, doesn't it, Jim? Yeah, really do. Okay, Joe, the rover handles quite well. The steering is quite responsive, even with only the rear steering. If I need to make a turn sharply, why, it responds quite well. Of course, when we turn, they dig in, and it makes the rear end break out. But it's okay, we handle it.
Knew you could. Are the front wheels wandering off of straight ahead as you drive along there?
No, they're okay, Joe. It's just, there are a lot of craters, and it's just sporty driving. I've just got to keep my eye on the road every second. Gonna miss that double Ackerman, I can see that now.
So here we are in stage 2. We have 2 geological stations in this stage. Our first is uphill towards St. George. That's going to be a long station, possibility of 5 points, but it'll take 45 minutes to do all of our station tasks. And a final tile station, just like the last stage. It is between Flow and Slide, which were 2 craters on the lunar surface. We are in double Ackerman steering, which we retain from the previous stage. The reason I chose that is because a number of these first few tiles have mid-speed obstacles. We have a gear 3-4 corner and 2 gear 3 jumps, as well as 2 water hazards. So we're not going to have a lot of chance to get up through the gears, and double Ackerman steering with its 3-gear dice will serve us well in that regards. It'll also allow us to generate a lot of focus tokens because it'll be easier for us to go flat out with its 4 hazard limit before loss of control. So let us take it away. We have 3 gear dice available to us. I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, and then we will coast through the corner. And the double Ackerman steering mode has an extra coast die which we can use on that jump, which would put us into this space. 5 dice, 4 hazards before crashing out. I'm going to go flat out. 5 clear dice, so that is 5 focus points that we can use on a future turn. We end over here in gear 3, so we're going to take a gear 3 time card, and that is the end of our first turn. We don't have any brakes to drop us down to gear 1, so our distance is a bit limited on this turn, but we will go into gear 2 there. We will coast through the water hazard, and then I'm going to go up to gear 3 on the jump, which will hopefully take us into a drift space. Now, in double Ackerman steering, you can't drift, but you can use the corner spaces as though they were separate corner spaces, just like Rallyman GT. We are much more maneuverable in how we go about the course. So I'm going to place that gear 3 die there, and I'm then going to place our second coast die in the middle space after that. Again, I'm going to go flat out because we are liking the look of this dice with our 4 hazard limit. That's a problem. Right, our gear 2 was good and our coast through the water hazard was good, but our jump was a hazard. Now, normally that wouldn't affect you. You could still gain that extra space of movement from the jump. But in this particular case, with our double Ackerman steering setup, we have to change lanes when we get a hazard symbol on the jump. So we actually end up in the inside lane of this corner. So we end our turn in gear 3. However, we have lost control for speeding in that corner. I'm going to turn that over to gear 0 and pull 2 damage tokens for the severity of that corner. The first is -1 gear. That is not too good for us with our 3 gears in this steering mode. And the second is a -1 gear. So that is definitely not good for the double Ackerman steering mode. We do, however, make some movement towards our geological station. We're on this first inside lane space. That is not good, and we have some problems to fix on future turns. Don't forget to take your focus tokens when you earn them. We earned another 4 for that roll, even though we spun out. So we are in gear 0 for this turn, and we have 2 gear damage. So our gear 1 puts us just to the exit of the hairpin, and then our 2 coast die will put us as far down through the tile as we can get. and we will then come to a stop and perform our station tasks towards St. George's Crater. Despite the last roll ending in a loss of control, I am still feeling good on going flat out for this roll, so we will go and generate as much focus as we can before our station. We have 2 hazards, one on the 1 and one on a coast, but that is well beneath our limit of 4. So we are going to put ourselves right at the end of this tile. Going to take a gear 1 time card, turn it over to gear 0 so that we can perform our station tasks. Station 2 will require us to roll gears 1 to 5, and it'll take 45 minutes to generate a maximum of 5 points. The 1 is good. I'm going to risk the 2. The 2 is good. I'm going to risk the 3. The 3 is good. The 4 is also good. And I'm going to spend 1 focus on saving this 5. So we have 5 points from our second station. It has taken us 45 minutes. The last thing that we can do is decide whether we want to switch our steering modes. I want to do that, and that will allow us to speed through the rest of the stage. However, we do have some gear damage, so I'm going to trundle along for the next turn and then try to fix some of that gear damage in a new rule for Rallymoon.
Yeah, we are walking uphill, too. Set ever uphill. There is one boulder. Very angular, very rough surface texture. Seems like there's a linear fracture through one side. It looks like we have maybe a breccia on top of a crystalline rock. It's sort of covered with glass. I can't really tell, but I can see a definite linear feature through one side of it, which is about 1/5. And there's also one surface which is quite flat, only for about 8 inches or so. Looks like it's been chipped off. The boulder itself is on the order of about 1 meter across and 1 meter across, and maybe, gee, it looks like a 1/2 meter thick or so. It's got a fillet up one side, and the other side is in the shadow. I can't really tell whether, it doesn't look like it's filled. It's got a fillet on the downslope side, and the upslope side is open and free. As a matter of fact, it looks like it's almost excavated beneath it. That looks fairly recent, doesn't it? Yeah, it sure does. It sure does, and I can see underneath the upslope side, whereas on the downslope side, it's piled up. Boy, that is really something. Hey, let's get some good pictures of that before we disturb it too much. Can you imagine that, Joe? Here sits this rock, and it's been here since before creatures roamed the sea on our little Earth.
Attaboy, Dave, that might fill a square for the football-sized rock.
Sure would. Okay, hang on to this one for a second. There, I got it. 181.
Roger, 181, and we have a view of the rill that is absolutely unearthly.
I'm glad you can enjoy it with us. Yes, sir, Joe. Just tell me this isn't worth doing, boy. Okay, now we got the fillet. We got the soil. Now we need to sample the rock. Yeah, let me give me your hammer. I think up on top here, if you hit it, it'll break. Yeah, right here? Right there, yeah. There it is. I got it. Okay, I'm going to start to rake, Dave. Okay, have at it. Joe, the soil is dark gray, and it's fine grain, and I haven't seen any difference in granularity between the limb and our position at all. It all looks about the same. It's fairly cohesive with very few fragments in it. Jim's getting about 3 or 4 with each scoopful. Well, 2 or 3. Hey, Joe, we got a crater that looks sort of fresh up here, 100 meters or so, looks like, with a fairly fresh rim. Would you like a double core in the rim of that, or would you like us just to pull it right here? It'll probably take a good 5 minutes to get up there. Yeah, you're right.
Negative. Drive the core where else you think might be convenient.
Oh, we got a good place here. We got a fairly deep crater. It must be about 10 meters across and 1.5 meters or so deep, and we'll pick the rim of that. Is that good enough place for you, Jim, right here? Sure is, Dave. I wouldn't want to go up much farther on this slope. It's too hard to get up. It sure is, isn't it?
And Dave and Jim, as you're getting a double core for us there, we'll be wanting to leave the station in about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, Joe. As far as you can push it, Jim? That's as far as I can push it. I got the picture. Go ahead. Okay, it's we got one full core. Second core is going in about 2 inches per hammer stroke.
Roger.
And we've got almost the second core. Got another couple inches to go, Jim. Doing good.
Jim, you're an Iron Man.
Don't smash your finger. All the way in. Good show. Okay. Let me come up to the hill there. I got the picture. Okay. Pull it out very gently. That's nice. Coming out very clean. Looks clean. Hold it steady. Don't lose the core. You can hold this one. I'll put the cap on the bottom one. For new caps, you know, they're a lot harder to get on.
Roger, Dave, and we're interested in you're climbing aboard now and start back towards the limb. We're going to eliminate Station 3.
Okay. Tidy the rover up. Ready for another little drive.
So my first dice is going to be gear 2 with the flying start rule. Remember, you can do that whenever you have started your turn in gear 0. That will allow us to eke out a little bit more space as we go gear 1 and then coast and then come to a stop on this tile. I've been going quite well with my flat out rolls, so I will see how far we get with this one too. We are good. There is 2 hazards on the 1 and the coast, but the 2 dice is fine, so our flying start is good. So we're going to make use of our spare tyre card. That will be our time card for this turn. So that is 1 minute further into the mission. However, to repair damage that isn't coast die, we have to roll a break die. And if this is a hazard, then the repair attempt fails and we still lose that 1 minute of time. So we can only repair 1 gear die damage, and we have successfully done so. We are going to go into gear 1. We're going to coast through the corner. We're going to go up to gear 2, into gear 3, over to gear 4. We'll put down gear 5 and we'll see what happens. I don't know how far through this run we will get. Let's have a look. The 1 is good. The coast is good. The 2 is good. The 3 is good. Maybe I should have gone flat out. The 4 is good. Definitely should have gone flat out. The 5 is good. However, we have ended our turn in gear 5, so we have to take the leader die to get that extra space of movement. That is also good. That puts us all the way over here in gear 5. Which is a pretty good turn. Wish I went flat out on it, but that's the nature of Rallyman. We're going to take a gear 5 time card for our turn, and we're going to see how we get through this low speed corner coming up. What I'm going to do is drop to gear 3 through the shortcut, and then I'm going to accelerate out to gear 6 as fast as I can, coast, and if I get that far, I will have a forced coast past the finish line, which will end the stage. Now you will note that if I end the stage in gear 6, then I can't slow down to perform the station tasks that are also on this finish line tile. Station 3 only gives us a maximum of 2 points and takes 14 minutes to get those 2 points. The time I'm not so worried about if I'm comparing just against Apollo 15, because I will always beat them on time. It's the points that matter when it comes to comparing yourselves to the actual Apollo missions. We have the luxury of carrying on with the planned traversal routes, which means more stations than the Apollo crews were able to manage. But again, I'm going to fly through this one because I like to finish in high gear. The 3 and the break die were good. Our shortcut token is -1 speed limit for the turn. It's not going to affect me. The 4 then is a hazard. The 5 is good. I am going to pay for the 6, and I will pay for the coast die as well. And then I'm going to have to end my turn in gear 6, which means I take a gear 6 time card, and I also roll the extra leader dice for ending my turn in gear 6. This will take us across the line Doesn't matter if it's a hazard because we are not at our limit of 3. We have zoomed past the finish line in gear 6. That is the end of stage 2. I'm going to count up the time it has taken me, and this time I'm going to double check my counting before hitting the record button. We finished that stage in 3 minutes and 55 seconds. We ended up with 11 focus tokens to reduce that time a little bit. We spent 45 minutes at station 2 to get us 5 points. Again, that was the maximum. In total then, that took us 48 minutes and 44 seconds. We ended up with 1 bit of gear damage at the end of the stage, and we have used our spare tyre card, so we don't have that in the next stage. And while I set up that third and final stage, I will leave you with a nice little clip of a science experiment that was performed in EVA-3.
Well, in my left hand I have a feather. In my right hand a hammer. And I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields. And we thought that where would be a better place to confirm his findings than on the moon. And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a falcon feather for our falcon. And I'll drop the 2 of them here, and hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that? Mr. Galileo was correct in his findings.
With no geological stations to worry about on this stage, this will play very much like a normal game of Rallyman. We're going to try and make use of all of our 5 gears, thanks to that gear die damage in the previous stage, to get as far down the track in as quick a time as we can. It's as simple as that. Right, let's kick us off with a gear 1 into gear 2. I'm going to risk that shortcut because it allows me to get through the track quicker. We can go up to gear 3, into gear 4, gear 5 through the water hazard crater. Will end our turn there and then if we get that far. I am not going to risk a flat out turn with all of those dice, so let's see one by one. The gear 1 is a hazard. The gear 2 is good. The shortcut space is good, but we're going to pick a damage token to see what we get. That is -1 speed limit for any other lunar rover on the surface of the moon following us. The gear 3 is a second hazard. So do I want to risk going into gear 4? Probably not. I'm going to try and eke out some distance on my next turn instead. So we're going to take a gear 3 time card for the turn, and that is our first turn on this stage complete. So we do have brakes, so we can go down to gear 1 if we want to, but I think we're going to carry on in gear 2. We're going to coast through the water hazard. We're going to go up to 3, up to 4, up to 5, and let's see how we get through these 5 dice and potentially the 6th dice for the forced coast. Gear 2 is good. The coast through the water hazard crater is good. Gear 3 is good. Gear 4 is good. I wish I went flat out. Gear 5 is a hazard. So we have got an extra leader dice to roll because we ended our turn in gear 5. That will take us over the jump. We're good for hazards. It was no hazard, and we are going to end our turn in gear 5 all the way over here. This next turn coming up is going to be a tricky one then. We have a water hazard and a slow corner right after it. So this turn I might well be slowing down to a stop, which is not ideal for the time, but will get us the distance. So what I'm going to do is coast into this water hazard. I'm going to drop to gear 3. That's in a drift space, which means we take a hazard for doing that. I will probably, if we're still going in the turn, cut into the inside lane to end that drift and then just come out in gear 1. The balance between how long it takes you versus how far you can get down the track will be a decision that is in your hands. We might not even get down to this last dice depending on the previous results. So let's see how far we get in this roll. The coast die through the water hazard is good. We have to take one hazard to enter this drift space, and we're rolling a 3 and a brake die. So this might end our turn right here. As it happens, there is a hazard on the gear 3, so we are at 2 hazards for the turn, but we're in this drift space. Now I think with gears 1 and 2 we can risk rolling them. Gear 2 to get us out of the drift is good, takes us to the inside space there, and then gear 1 to finish our turn is good as well. So we've eked out the distance, but it has taken us time to slow down. And that's quite interesting because it's around halfway through the return leg of Apollo 15 that they also slowed down, but for an altogether different reason. The video you've seen from the stations was taken by the camera on the front of the LRV. After parking, the astronauts would make sure that the high gain antenna was pointed towards Earth, allowing controllers in Houston to direct the camera themselves, pointing wherever they wanted. Often it was towards the astronauts to see what they were doing, but it also panned around towards whatever the geologists in the back room were interested in too. It was a vital extra pair of eyes for the mission to make use of, even if the footage was fuzzy. Transmitting footage from this camera while driving was attempted, but it didn't really work. The signal to Earth was too unstable, and it also didn't help that the camera kept falling over. Importantly for Scott and Irwin, it meant that NASA wasn't watching their every move. They were just listening to them.
Oh, there's some vesicular basalt right there, boy. Oh, man.
So, Scott spots an interesting rock while driving, but knows he can't stop to pick it up. He's been told to go straight back to the lunar lander and carry on with the other tasks of the EVA. Luckily, he's been having troubles with his seatbelt.
Just hold on 1 second. We gotta hit. Okay, we're stopping. Gotta get my seatbelt. There it is. Hang on to it here for a second. Okay, I've got it.
And are you moving again?
No, we're stopped here, Joe. I'll let you know when we move.
Roger.
As you know, these small fresh craters that we've commented on, whatever caused them must create or indurate the soil into the rocks. Creates its own rocks. So there's just a concentration of rocks around the very fresh ones.
Roger, Jim. Sounds very plausible.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah. Get it? Get it. Shoot, Dave, I think I dropped the map, did you? Yeah. Here, hold my seatbelt.
So we now get the chance to speed up again, and we are going to be in gear 1. So let's start us off with gears. Let's go high. Let's go gear 2. Let's go gear 3 through the corner, up to gear 4, and then we will coast in gear 4. Gear 5 on the jump would put us here, and the forced coast would put us into the water hazard. I'm comfortable with that if it comes to it. So let's roll these one by one again. Gear 2 is good. Gear 3 is a hazard. Gear 4 is good. The coast is good, and the massive jump is a hazard. We've gone 2 extra spaces, but then have immediately crashed. We are in gear 5, take a gear 5 time card. We are in an orange tile, which means we draw 3 bits of damage. We have -1 brake die. That was our one and only brake die. We have -1 gear. We are not strangers to that token. And our final pull is a green flag. I like the look of that. So a 1 through the water hazard, a 2 across the jump, a 3, and then a 4 into the corner. That's the most amount of gears I can place, but we will place our coast die in that last space. I am going to go flat out on this roll for no other reason than maybe my luck has changed. We are 2 hazards, so we've generated 5 focus points for that roll. And it moves us 5 spaces into the end of the corner in gear 4. So we're coming into another low speed corner, but I think we've got just enough to work our way through it. If we go coasting through the water hazard. We can then drop down to gear 3 in this space. We can cut through the shortcut in gear 4 and then try to speed our way towards the lunar lander gears 5 and 6. Again, with a forced leader die to hopefully propel us one extra space. Let us see how we go. We do have some focus to play with this time. The coast is a hazard. The 3 is good. The 4 through the shortcut is good, but we're going to take a shortcut token. And that is -1 coast die. That's not too good, but we are at the end of the stage, so I think we can get by. I'm going to roll the 5, so we are at 1 hazard. We have 2 hazards on the 5, which means I'm going to pay for the gear 6. That will put us all the way over here. However, we have ended our turn in gear 6, so we are going to roll that extra leader die to see whether we get a loss of control or not. That is good. We are 2 spaces away from the finish in gear 6. We have a relatively simple turn ahead of us. There are only 2 spaces for the finish line, so we can put down a 5 and a 6, and we'll go flat out on those dice to try and get some seconds back. They were 2 hazards, which is good because we have a hazard limit of 3. So we ended the stage in a bit of a shaky way, but we've managed to cross the line, and we are now back at the lunar lander after EVA-1. So at the end of our stage, again, it was a straight rally, so it's an easy one to score. We got through from start to finish in 3 minutes and 15 seconds, if I've been counting correctly. We have 6 focus tokens remaining, which means our final time was 3 minutes and 9 seconds. If we add that stage up with the first 2 stages, we get a total EVA time of 71 minutes and 6 seconds and 8 out of a possible 10 points on our station scores. Is that good? Is that bad? You will have to find out for yourselves by playing a full Apollo mission in Rallymoon. I'll give you a heads up. We are trying to beat the Apollo 15 score of 29 points. We have only got 8 so far, but Apollo 15 had a lot of troubles with their apparatus in EVAs 2 and 3, and it ended up having to scrub most of EVA 3. That means that we will be able to go to some geological stations that no Apollo crew has ever gone to before and attempt to pick up some points. Now, I'm not going to be doing EVA-2 in today's video, but I hope you're interested in seeking out some more information from Apollo 15 yourselves. I'm going to give you a couple of recommendations for how you can go about doing that. The first is the Lunar Surface Journal page. Now, that is a massive collection of archival material from sound recordings to video to photos to mission reports to lunar roving vehicle instruction manuals. They have got literally everything that you can wish for from an Apollo mission on that website. But if you don't want to look through all of the archives yourself, you can go over to YouTube and look at homemade documentaries. They collate all that information into an easily digestible documentary format. It's well worth a watch if you are at all interested in this space stuff like I am. And that was Rallymoon, or a good chunk of it at least. We didn't go through all of the rules in the rulebook. Notable exceptions include some of the drifting and sliding rules. The lunar surface would rather grip your tyres than let you slide across it. And we also didn't make full use of the double Ackerman steering setup. It has a nice party trick to do with its movement rules that will allow you to generate lots of focus in a small amount of space. Like Rallyman, the rules to Rallymoon are modular, so you should be able to pick and choose what you like to make use of for your games. And you can also make use of the community content like the NPC drivers in order to give yourself some opponents during your solo runs. NASA do want to return to the moon with the Artemis project, so we can expect some more lunar rover action in the coming years, should all go to plan. And maybe there will be a Rallyman Dakar of some sort, in which case we can take the rules to that and modify them into more rules for Rallymoon. That would be a nice way to explore the lunar surface, going from waypoint to waypoint rather than following a set course. If you have any questions or suggestions, then don't hesitate to get in touch. Your best bet is probably through Board Game Geek. It is the Rallyman community and what they create that inspires me, and I hope I have inspired you to do something similar. It can be a variant rule or just a Rallyman stage. It doesn't have to be on the scale of Rallymoon, but this is clearly a passion project that has been keeping me going for a few years now, and I am finally glad to be able to share it with you. I don't know if there are any Rallymoon videos incoming. This has been fun, but it has definitely been a challenge, especially trying to glue those antennae back on. But they are finally on now. I just need to paint over all the blobs of glue that I've left on top. I hope you've learned something about both the Moon and Rallyman, and I hope you have fun with Rallymoon however you get it to your table. Thank you for checking out Rallymoon, and don't slow down. I had to film that outro so many times and I was never happy with it, and here I am doing another one on top of it. It feels weird to be enjoying a game that so many people that you interact with in the community don't have access to. And if they ever do get access to it, it may cost them more and they may... Oh, thanks. Hi. Hello, Poppet. If they ever do get access to Rallyman Dirt, it will probably be as a result of buying it in retail, which of course means that they have paid twice as much and potentially gotten less content than they originally expected to get. So you can understand my umming and ahhing over whether to release this Rallymoon video or not, as I am essentially gloating over the fact that I can play something that they really wanted to play. As you can hopefully tell, I don't want to gloat, I just want to share the passion and excitement that I get from Rallyman with as many people as possible. And to that end, I have been wondering what to do with Rallymoon, and a couple of ideas have come up. Now, the stage maps are black and white print friendly, so there is the option of a print and play type of deal, but the problem with that is that the time cards and the damage tokens and other components like that will also need to have either a print and play version or some other analog in the rules to work out all your damages and your shortcuts and so on. The other thought is that it shouldn't take too much work to retroactively fit with the original run of Rallyman Dirt. The problem with that is that I don't know very much about it, and so I would have to dive into that side of the Rallyman community to find some help with that. There is, of course, the tabletop simulator option, but in the murky world of copyrights and licensing, I have absolutely no idea how I would go about doing that. Basically, whatever ideas you have, I am definitely listening, and I really do hope that at some point, somehow, you can get hold of Rallyman Dirt. I definitely don't know what comes next, but again, thanks for watching and have a good day.